Dear stranger, this is my second letter of many to come. I want to share a story I have titled Bámitálé. If you are not Yoruba speaking, that name means wait till I become old. It's a name often given to children to somewhat entreat them against leaving, dying in. I was about 12 years old when I met her. She was smallish like me, very talkative, very bright. She had infectious eyes that sparkled with joy. However, something peculiar about her was her belly, her stomach, that is. It appeared bigger than typical for girls my age. I didn't think much of it though. I can no longer recall how or under what circumstances we met. Time has taken its toll. But I do remember that we quickly became best friends. You see, it was the first time I had a friend I considered my best. We tried to see each other daily, despite not attending the same primary school. She lived pretty close to my home in GRE those days. One day, while we chatted about everything and nothing as usual, we landed on the topic of genotypes. It was strange for her age, you might say. So she looked at me. She asked me, "What's your genotype?" And I replied that I was AS. Her countenance changed, which was strange for her. She looked at me long and hard and said, "Tony, promise me you will never marry a man who is AS, no matter the situation." I wondered why it was such a big deal. But I replied, "I will not." And she said, "I don't want you to have a child like me." I responded, "But a child like you will be great, considering she's an awesome person." Her smile faded even more, and she said, "Tony, I am SS." She went on to educate me about the condition called sickle cell anemia. I asked her, "What does a crisis feel like?" She said, "I hope you never know." That was deep. I found myself reflecting on our conversation for days afterward as it unsettled me deeply. Moving on, we had big dreams about secondary school. We agreed we will achieve excellent results so we could attend the same school and stay best friends for life. However, as days passed, we saw each other less, mostly because of school. So one afternoon, I rushed out of the house, eager to catch up with my bestie. When I entered her home, her gracious mom said, "Your friend is a bit unwell and resting in her room." I followed her and found Tale. She looked frail and smiled dryly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes like it used to. I can still see it. She seemed to be in deep pain, and I felt so helpless. Then she said, "Toy, this is what a crisis looks like." Tears filled my eyes, but she reassured me, "Don't cry. I'll be fine soon." We couldn't talk much, so I just stayed with her and I prayed. Whew. She loved prayer and had faith that was uncommon for a child. By the next day, I couldn't wait to eat lunch and rush off to see her. I was overjoyed to have my bestie back, and I told her everything happening in my life. Thankfully, she was sitting up and cheerful, but her eyes were yellow, pale, very yellow. My joy was that I had my bestie back, and I told her everything happening in my life. I was so glad to have her back, and she could see it. So much so I had lost track of time, and it was almost past my curfew. So I told her I had to go. We hugged as usual. And as I got to the door, she called me. She said, "Toy, I wish you didn't have to go." I said, "Me too. But I'll come tomorrow as early as I can." As promised, I rushed over the next day after school. I was surprised to see cars parked outside her house and many adults wondering about an event I had not been informed about. So I sneaked inside quietly. I found her immediate younger brother and asked, "Where is Sale?" He pointed to the sky, and I playfully scolded him, "Stop joking around." I walked in to find her mom surrounded by many people. She honored me by walking towards me and said, "Tony, your friend is gone." As I write this, I relieve the emotions as if they are happening now. My heart was racing, and I ran out of the house. I couldn't stop running, and adults were assigned to chase and stop me. I was running with a lot of passion. When someone finally caught up with me, I just held that person and cried and cried and cried. The irony of her name struck me at that moment, and I have never forgotten. Before that day or that phase of my life, no one had taught me about grief. I felt a huge void inside, and I felt guilty every time I smiled after that. I struggled with what to do with the pain that wouldn't go away. Everyone around me respected my silence, but underestimated the depth of my grief. I will sing the song "One Sweet Day" by Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men, knowing every line, singing and crying through my sorrow. She had been the highlight of every day. When I finally got into secondary school, I felt an urge to avoid making new friends. I didn't want to replace her. I continued like that, and I'll write notes to her at the back of every school notebook. I went through just one with that feeling and those emotions, feeling guilty that I was beginning to lose memories we shared. The grief was deep. The emptiness was personal. Eventually, I found the courage to pray and accepted that she would have wanted me to be happy, purposeful, and free. The irony of her name still resonates with me. Why am I writing this? To encourage you to live purposefully and to remind you that everyone grieves differently. There is no ideal way to feel about a lost love and the future you will not have with that important person. I hope you spend each day loving those dear to you, devotedly and intentionally. While we don't teach children how to experience and deal with grief, life finds a way to impact those lessons. I've lost many more dear people along the way throughout my journey. And this year has dealt me another set of significant blows. We are all going to leave the world someday. So there may be someone reading this by the bedside of a loved one or the graveside. I'm sorry. I hope you grieve fully and in your own way, but do not implode. Let it out one day at a time. Create and document memories now that you can. They may be all you have soon. Sally and I never took pictures. It just wasn't as common at the time. I hope you live fully, one day at a time. I hope you stay respectful to people who have lost a dear one. I hope that when you face the unexpected goodbye of a loved one, you'll have made awesome memories with them, and that God grants you the strength to carry on and live purposefully. Love, TY.